Welcome to Zoom In, Zoom Out, your global look at news from Taiwan. I'm Sally Jensen. Food is integral to sustaining our lives, but how often do you think about the stories behind what we eat? To discuss our connection with food and how it shapes our well-being, we're joined today by Pei-Ru Ko. She's a writer and founder of the Food Culture Collective. Pei-Ru, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sally.
Would you mind introducing yourself and telling us a bit about how you got to your journey centered around food?
Yeah, it wasn't my big life plan to work in food, but when I had a health crisis back in 2009, 2010, I started looking at what is something I can bring a little bit more agency back in the healing process versus only medication or only hoping for the best. And so I started learning about food, learning about nutrition. And then more and more I noticed while I was inward focused, looking for something healthy and clean for myself, there are actually a lot of food people who are trying to do something bigger. They're using food to heal societal wounds. They're using food to heal soil health. And more I realized it's a much bigger issue, and food intersects everything. So that's how I came to really be fond of it and started an organization that supports the food culture transformation from one that's more supremacist focused, one that's more focused on profit only, to one that focuses on people, that focus on our collective health.
So let's zoom out. You've touched on some of these societal issues with food. What other major problems do you see as facing food in the world today?
There are so many. Everything from the fact that the world tells you there's a big issue with hunger, but it's not that we're not growing enough food. We grow more than enough. It's an issue of distribution and an issue of power and an issue of food waste. Just like in America, close to half of our food is wasted. So there's issue from that end. There's certainly a lot of issue around labor. For a long time, again, we look at food as profit. So how can we, on the same piece of land, grow as much as we can and pay as least as we can? So there's a lot of labor issue, whether it's farmers' health or just food justice in general. And then there's environmental issues. So I feel like it's pretty complex.
And you've just mentioned this issue of power around food. How do you think this power, is it being abused?
Yes, food is power. And the way it was powerful back in the olden days through how we feed our people, our children, how we feed each other. But then, yes, I do think food has been abused. When you think about how Americans come to America, and to control the Native Americans, one of the main things they did was control their food source. And back then that was buffalo was a huge part of their diet. So just capturing them all, killing them all, not for use, but simply to control. Then you could introduce things like flour and sugar and a dependency on these outsiders. That's how you control. And the same thing I learned, it happened in Taiwan too. When you think about with Japanese occupation, one of the things they did was to introduce rice, while millet was the main grain for the indigenous. And when they make rice so much cheaper and make farmers want to grow rice instead of millet, that's how you shift the diet. And then you can shift the control. Where does the seeds of the rice come from? Things like that. And millet was so much a representation of unification and coming together for the indigenous community. And when you take that away, it's a big symbol of what you take away as well. So those are the past. Like if you trace that and you get to today, our mega food corporations have a good control of what food is available for us. It goes everything from seeds to what's on the shelves. So food is powerful, but it can use in different directions.
So Pei-Ru, we're going to zoom in next on Taiwan and your experience exploring the food systems here. But first, I want to take a look at a recent scandal involving chili powder in Kaohsiung. Let's take a look.
Recalls, police searches, and possible charges. A scandal over tainted chili powder from China is cooking up trouble across the country. Kaohsiung prosecutors have released businessman Li Yenting on a $25,000 bond and stripped his companies of their license to handle food products. They say Li knowingly sold chili powder mixed with cancer-causing red dyes banned in Taiwan. But the scandal has stirred up far more than legal troubles. Public alarm reached the point where all chili pepper is suspect.
我有时候搞不好会把它丢掉了，然后我大概就觉得不会吃，尽量最近都不会吃，以后可能也不会吃吧。
就是会用那个生辣椒切来炒菜啊，或是配料还 OK， 化学的或那些工业的我就不再用了。
Demand for domestic chili has tanked, with prices falling by about a third from where they were last year. Taiwan is a country where unease about food safety is frequently in the headlines. Memories of a 2013 to 2014 tainted cooking oil scandal are still fresh. And more recent controversies about U.S. pork containing leanness-enhancing additives and Japanese food products contaminated by the Fukushima nuclear disaster have left a bad taste in people's mouths.
That was John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus News. You can watch the full report on our website. Now back to our conversation with Pei-Ru in the studio. Pei-Ru, what do you make of this scandal? What does it tell you about Taiwan's relationship with food?
I think people are trying to do business, and when there's so much pressure to meet the CP value that we care a lot about in Taiwan, or anyone who's crunching money, crunching dollars care about, then you have that pressure. You want to bring your costs down. So you would use an industrial dye versus a food-safe dye because it's cheaper. I think when you look at it that way, you understand the motivation. It's not someone who like, oh, let me put toxic thing in everyone's food. It's like, oh, we need more money. We need to earn more money, and this is cheaper. Maybe it's not so bad. Let's put it in there. So I think I see it that way. I think when the whole system, economy, there's so much pressure for things to be cheap, and that's one of the driver towards a decision like this that come out today. But I think also for a long time, corporations have taught us, just trust us. Trust us, as long as you eat this, you'll be healthy. As long as you eat this, you will be slim. And rarely are we suggested or encouraged to look at the back label, or do people even have the support and the knowledge to understand what all the words mean in the ingredients label? So I think for a long time we pass the rights, or we pass the ability to feed our families to mostly corporation. In Taiwan, we eat out a lot, and we do less and less of that ourselves, less and less educating ourselves, where our food comes from, how to prepare food, where do chili powders come from. So I think it's both sides, and it's complex. It's not, I would say, just one person at fault and punit that person and it's enough. It's a symptom of what's ill.
So is this a question of our pursuit for perpetual growth on the planet? I mean, this is also causing a lot of environmental issues, as you've touched on before. Are we seeing this as an economic issue? How could it be resolved, do you think?
Yeah, it's a big issue that has lasted a long time globally. And I don't think just coming from one end, or in the environmentalist end, or only coming from government end, or only from business end will solve it. We need to all work together. And I think it's finding each of our individual ways. For me, I'm working it through culture work. I'm working it through writing. I'm working it through speaking about it. And some people work on the forefront of it. So I think all of it is great, but how do we work together I think that's the key for the future.
What kinds of initiatives or projects have you seen here that are trying to improve people's connections to the food and the land?
I think there are many. Everything from farmers market association trying to invite everyday folks to meet their farmer, to buy directly from their farmers, to folks like that I mentioned in my book, indigenous farmer who are trying to preserve the almost lost genes of millet and have it grow back in Ami's land again, and to have millet wine made from millet again versus glutinous rice. I think there are many beautiful initiatives that are happening. Also farm edible education programs. I think there's edible education initiatives happening throughout the country, but the one I know most intimately is being run by Lovely Taiwan Foundation. And they have programs throughout many towns, more than, I think, 14 plus towns in Taiwan. It's interesting because a lot of these towns are agriculture towns, and the kids' parents might even be farming, but through the kids and through the combination of learning it in their science classes or their language classes or sometimes even math, like how they can have a greater sense of understanding why organic matters or why growing food and preparing yourself make a difference. I think it will have a rippling effect into the agriculture farmlands and then back into the city as well. So that's one of the examples I've seen.
So would you be able to tell us about this honey that you brought?
So what I brought here is native Taiwanese honey. Most of the honey produced in Taiwan, 90% plus of the honey produced in Taiwan are by European bees, or mostly Italian bees. And the issue with that is European bees cannot pollinate Taiwan's native forests. They cannot handle low temperature, so they cannot go to middle high altitude of the forest. That makes the native bee extra important. And as you know, whether it's bee colony collapse, a lot of diseases have threatened the bee communities, bee population. So farmers like Zhen Laoshi here that produce the Jingcai Dijia farm honey are doing an important work for preservation. And not only do we get incredible product, it's a forest honey, so it has a really complex flavor profile, and he also doesn't temperature treat it, which is very common in Taiwan. So it preserves all the enzyme, everything that makes the honey actually good for you. And then it's incredibly important for our ecosystem to have healthy population of native bees. So I find this as a great example for food for collective wellness, something that's good for my health, good for even our businesses. You need healthy bees to pollinate for our farms and also good for our environment.
Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us on the show, Pei-Ru.
Thank you.
This has been Zoom In, Zoom Out. You can find more stories from TaiwanPlus by following us on social media. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
We bring you stories from Taiwan.
Every day of the week.
Our reporters travel the nation.
Exploring the issues that matter to you.
News from here in Taiwan and around the world.
What's up, Taiwan? On TaiwanPlus.